Sources say the government will issue bonds totaling some $70 billion in the next fiscal year. The Law Society suggests that the government consider the inclusion of public interest defense in its Article 23 legislative exercise. And Joe Biden hopes for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip within days. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Financial Secretary Paul Chan is going to deliver his budget speech tomorrow morning. It's understood the government will roll out a fresh round of retail bonds in a new financial year. They include infrastructure-themed bonds. With the lackluster stock market performance, many people like to invest their money in government bonds for more stable returns. Last year, the government issued green and silver bonds worth $75 billion. It's understood that in the next fiscal year, the government will issue retail bonds totaling some $70 billion. More than half will be silver bonds. Last year, the silver bonds for seniors aged 60 or above had a dividend payout rate of 5%, higher than the time deposit rates of many banks at the time. For green bonds, a payout of 4.75%. The previous rounds of silver and green bonds saw oversubscriptions of 40% and 100% respectively. Earlier this year, the Airport Authority issued bonds for projects including the third runway with 170,000 subscriptions. In view of the popularity, the government will reportedly propose the issuance of infrastructure-related bonds in the budget. With more bond issuance, Secretary for Finance Paul Chan earlier revealed the proportion of government debt to local GDP will rise from the current 4% to around 10%. Stanley Ho, partner of an accounting firm, said the 10% debt to GDP ratio is still much lower than many other countries and remains a healthy proportion. On land sales, 3 of the 7 government development projects last year failed to be sold in land auctions. This year's budget deficit of more than $100 billion mainly arose from the steep declines in income from land sales and stamp duties. Ricky Wong, vice chairman of Wheelock Properties, said, given the high interest rate environment, developers will remain more cautious when bidding for land. This as money could have been invested in much safer options, such as the time deposits with guaranteed 4 to 5% returns. He said easing the stamp duty and relaxing the thresholds for mortgage stress tests would help stimulate the property market. Lawmaker Ronick Chan, who chairs the Finance Committee at the Legislative Council, said land sales remain the linchpin of government income over the coming few years, and the administration should consider reviewing the bidding mechanism to prevent more failed tenders down the road. The Financial Secretary's budget speech will be broadcast live on TVB Pearl starting 11 a.m. and a Budget Day press conference at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Hong Kong's private residential property prices fell for 9 straight months, reaching a 7-year low. According to the latest data from the Rating and Valuation Department, Hong Kong's residential property prices dipped 1.5% in January month-on-month, or 9.4% year-on-year. The price index marked the lowest since October 2016. The most prominent drop was recorded in large apartments with a size above 1,722 square feet. Meanwhile, the rental index shed 0.2% month-on-month, but it rose 6% compared with the year before. On the eve of the government's budget address, Bo Xiu-ming, chief executive of Midland Realty's residential section, said the relaxation of property cooling measures could help ease the downward trend of home prices. The Law Society of Hong Kong today said the government should consider including a public interest defense in Article 23 legislation. The organization made the comment after they submitted their views to the government before the public consultation period ends tomorrow. Min Mo-Sang-ai reports.
The Law Society today announced its views in a submission on national security legislation under Article 23 of the Basic Law. The body said the legislative exercise is a constitutional duty and should be given priority. It suggested that the government should clarify the definition of some words relating to certain offences, such as seditious intention, so that the law would not be used to target political speeches or other forms of expression. During the public consultation period, many talked about the idea of a public interest defence for offences like that of state secrets. The Law Society said there are many issues to consider on the subject.
it's definitely worthwhile looking into whether there's a need for this offence. I mean, there are a number of issues that we need to look at. For example, legal burden or evidential burden, that sort of things. The whole procedure should be looked at holistically.
The body also advised that the government can use Canada's Security of Information Act as a reference.
There should be a balance struck between national security and human rights. And I think the Canadian model at least provide a suitable mechanism for this matter to be considered. There is a procedure to be followed. There's an application to the government. If the government fails to respond, then the person may use public interest defense as a defense.
The Law Society said the conclusion is based on the principles for Article 23 legislation. They will wait for the bill to provide a more in-depth review. On TVB's Straight Talk program, Secretary for Security Chris Tan also talked about Article 23. He said the legislative exercise will make the city a better place as security is the basis of Hong Kong's economic development. He also hit back at criticisms against Article 23 legislation from overseas.
I understand that, there are people seeing things from different angles and in different positions. And as the chief executive always quote an example, like the enactment of Article 23 is like trying to build up a security lock against people burgle into our house. Mm-hmm. How can you expect someone that they're trying to burgle to our house to have positive comment on our lock?
Tan added that the law will only target people who try to endanger the city's national security, so visitors and business people have nothing to fear about if they do not come to Hong Kong for that purpose. News 9, TVB News.
The Hong Kong News Executives Association has suggested putting public interest explicitly as a defense in legislation for Article 23. The NEA said it supports the government's work on the legislation of Article 23 in accordance with the Basic Law. The group said there should be a balance between national security and the protection of people's rights and freedoms, which includes freedoms in speech, publication, and news, as guaranteed by the Basic Law. Sha Baolong, the director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, started the 6th day of his fact-finding trip to the city by visiting the Hong Kong Palace Museum. Accompanied by Chief Executive John Lee, Sha arrived at the West Kowloon Cultural District in the morning. Also in attendance were Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Kevin Yeung and Henry Tang, Board Chairman of the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. Sha also met some young people, including this Year 2 student studying FinTech at the University of Hong Kong. He said Sha encouraged them to work hard and explore different opportunities. In the afternoon, Sha met with some economics academics. Veteran political commentator Lau Siu Kai said Sha's visit mainly focused on the city's economic and financial development. Lau said he believes it's aimed at easing the business sector's concerns towards Hong Kong's economic prospects. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has vowed to go ahead with a plan to increase the number of students admitted into medical schools to improve healthcare in the country. Yoon said there is no justification for the protest sparked by the proposal. More than 9,000 young doctors, or about 2/3 of the total number of physician trainees in South Korea, have walked off the job because of the plan. They argue the healthcare sector is not short of doctors, and the government should address pay and working conditions first. The doctors have been issued with a Thursday deadline to stop their strikes or face legal action, including a potential suspension of their licenses. The walkout has disrupted services at major hospitals where emergency rooms have turned away patients and some surgeries and other procedures have been cancelled or postponed. Today, South Korean health authorities gave nurses the right to perform some medical procedures normally conducted by doctors, as authorities seek to ease the strain on hospital staff. U.S. President Joe Biden said Israel would be willing to pause its war on Hamas in Gaza during the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan if a hostage release deal can be reached. Talks being brokered by the United States, Egypt, and Qatar are continuing in Doha, though Israel has yet to respond to Biden's comments. Almost 30,000 people have been killed since October 7th, when Hamas-led Palestinian groups raided Israel, resulting in 1,200 deaths and the taking of 250 hostages. Naswi Karim with more.
In public, at least, Israel and Hamas are talking tough. Israel says they won't stop the war until Hamas is eradicated. Hamas saying no hostages will be released until Israel stops its aggression and pulls out of Gaza. However, US President Joe Biden in New York said he was confident a ceasefire deal involving the release of hostages is close, even by Monday.
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend. The end of the weekend. At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday we'll have a ceasefire.
As Gazans wait for relief, talks continue in Doha between the US, Egypt and Qatar, with Hamas reportedly receiving a draft proposal. It calls for a 40-day pause in fighting, the release of Palestinian prisoners and Israeli hostages at a ratio of 10-1, the repair of hospitals and bakeries, and 500 aid trucks into Gaza every day. Biden says he has detected a slowing down of Israeli airstrikes on Gaza's southern district of Rafah and other areas. But north of Israel's border with Lebanon, the bombs are falling with more intensity and is likely to continue even during any Gaza truce. Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant said they want Lebanon's Iranian-backed group Hezbollah to withdraw 7 to 10 kilometers from the border, either by agreement or we do it by force. On Monday, Israel conducted one of its deepest strikes into Lebanon since October 7th, hitting the northeastern city of Baalbek, killing 2 people. Meanwhile, famine threatens the population of 2.3 million in Gaza. In southern Khan Yunis, World Health Organization officials delivered urgent medical supplies along with food and fuel to Al Amal Hospital. Jordan's army on Monday said it carried out 4 airdrops of aid, including ready-made high-nutrition meals over Gaza, one of which belonged to the French armed forces. The drops were along the coast of the Gaza Strip from north to south. In Rafah, Palestinians queue for hours to receive a few pitas and loaves of bread to feed their families. While in the badly affected north, hundreds wait, some in vain, for emergency food deliveries. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Emmanuel Macron does not rule out putting Western troops on the ground in Ukraine in the future. The French president was speaking in front of 20 European leaders and Western officials at the Élysée Palace, where the option was being debated at an event in support of Ukraine. He said he does not want to go to war with Russia, but must keep escalation under control. Macron called on those present, including German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, to ensure the collective security of Europe. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke to delegates via video link.
We in Ukraine really appreciate that we have such friends. Thank you all, the leaders and every state that has been helping us for 2 years of this terrible full-scale war. Together, we have already saved millions of lives.
The Pentagon has released the results of a 30-day review that absolves itself of any wrongdoing concerning U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's secret hospitalizations in December and January, when Austin was moved to intensive care. He had no access to critical communications, and aides made the decision to transfer authority to the deputy, but did not tell the White House. The report is unlikely to quell political furor when Austin appears before the House Armed Services Committee later this week to address the matter. Tracy Furness has more.
Austin has been called to Capitol Hill on Thursday for a House hearing and is expected to face sharp criticism. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer in early December and was admitted to Walter Reed National Military Center for surgery on December 22nd. On January 1st, he was experiencing pain and was taken to the same hospital. Authority was transferred to Deputy Secretary Kathleen Hicks both times, but Austin did not tell the White House. The Pentagon acknowledged public affairs and defense aides were told on January 2nd, but the National Security Council was only told on January 4th, which is when President Joe Biden found out. And it took more days before the reason for his hospitalization was disclosed.
In his press briefing earlier this month, Secretary Austin highlighted and took responsibility for the shortcomings when it came to notifying the president and the White House about his cancer diagnosis, and acknowledged that we, the department, can and need to do and will do a better job in terms of notifying the White House.
Defense officials said in an unclassified report that Austin's staff was limited to what they could say due to privacy laws. But Austin later told reporters he never told his staff to keep his surgery and hospitalization secret from the White House. A Pentagon review recommended better guidelines for the transfer of authority and better reporting requirements during these kind of incidences in the future. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
3 new government-subsidized ferry vessels will be put into service in March. This is one of the new ships subsidized under the government-funded program. The ship's body is made of light carbon fiber and aluminium alloy materials. New facilities can be found on the vessel, including an accessible toilet and a pet area. Speaking at an opening ceremony, Secretary for Transport and Logistics Lam Sai-hung said the scheme seeks to improve the quality of vessels and promote environmental protection. Some 1.38 million visitors took cable car rides at Ngongping in 2023, marking a 2.5-fold surge year-on-year. To continue the momentum, the attraction is setting its sights on wooing more tourists from the broader Asian markets. A return to 95% of pre-pandemic visitor numbers in 2023. The promising recovery figure was recorded at Ngongping 360, the cable car rides on Lantau Island that boasted more than 4,000 guests a day on average last year. More notable surges seen in visitors from short-haul Asian markets. During the Lunar New Year holiday, the number of guests also jumped 26% year-on-year. That's 98% of pre-COVID levels, recovering in tandem a nearly 30% rise in the average spending per person at Ngongping Village, compared with both last year and pre-pandemic figures.
For the growth of 2023, is a happy year for us. Basically, what we do is exceed our expectation and our target.
Ngongping 360's management said there won't be a price hike for the cable car rides.
For 2024, it should be a promising year.
That's buoyed by new additions this year, including 10 newly purchased Crystal Plus cabins, which are expected to be in operation in December after safety tests. Ngongping 360 said they will step up collaboration with travel agencies and airlines. They include those in Taiwan and South Korea, which recorded slower growth last year. For other regions, which saw stronger market rebounds in visitor numbers, including the mainland, Singapore and Thailand, the operator said they will work to continue the momentum, especially through online campaigns via platforms such as Xiaohongshu, TripAdvisor and Instagram. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.